guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with my 5-star reads from the past 3 months. So I have been doing this almost for a year now, where I go back through the 3 months of the season, whether it's fall, summer, winter, spring, and chat about my 5-star reads. So I'm going to be talking about winter, which means it is December, January, February, and I have not that long of a list. So it's about 17 books. I read at least 25 books a month, so there were a couple months where I was struggling a little bit to find really good reads, but I do feel like I had a really strong February, and I read the least amount of books in February, so I'm gonna go ahead and get to the books that I gave 5 stars to for the past 3 months. So the first book I have is a Christmas romance. It's the only Christmas romance on this list, and that is Kiss Her Once for Me by Allison Cochran. This one is a sapphic romance, and it is a Christmas romance. It takes place during Christmas. It's second chance. The two heroines had hooked up the previous Christmas, had an amazing time together, and then something happened where they went their separate ways, and one of them is like so sad over what happened and like cannot believe that happened and still hung up on her, and so she is actually struggling a lot with money, and so the owner of the building she works at ends up overhearing her talking about money, and he needs to get married to get an inheritance, and he is like, you know what, we could do this. We could make it work. We could live together. Let's get married and I'll give you this money. And she does not want to, but they decide to say yes. So she goes home to his family and figures out that his sister is the person she had hooked up with the year before. And it's kind of messy, which I love, because the guy she wants to marry also has someone that he's hung up on as well. And so stuff happens at their family Christmas, and it was just so much fun. I love the angst and the second chance romance aspect of this. Second chance is like one of my favorite tropes now. So had so much fun with this. Loved the family aspect, and it's Christmas. Like, I love Christmas romances during the holiday time, so I really enjoy this one. So the next one's actually historical romance, and that's Duke Most Wicked by Lenora. This one is so fun because the hero actually is very upset with his family situation, especially his parents, and they passed away, and he decides to just gamble away their money, and he doesn't care about their title, he doesn't care about their reputation, until it is brought to his attention that his sisters are not going to be able to get married. And so he is like, well, shoot, let me fix this, and he tries to set them all up with people, and the sisters are like, what are you doing? Absolutely not. No. Like, some of them want to have matches of their own, some of them don't want to get married, and they have a music teacher who tells him like this cannot happen, and they end up having a romance together, the hero and the music teacher, and it is so fun. I really enjoyed this one. It had a really fun cast of characters. It really reminded me of one of the Hathaway books where she was a governess as well, and I just love the Lisa Kleypas vibes I got from this. I love Lenora so much. So this one, highly recommend if you want a fun historical romance that's a little bit of a unique plot, because the hero is not someone who really takes his job seriously, but then he wants to for his sisters, and I just loved it. Then I have The Serpent and the Wings of Night, and this one should be no surprise. Chrissa Broadbent. It's fantasy romance. It is amazing. There are vampires. She's human. She has to enter these trials in order to win to, I don't even remember what the winner gets, but her father had won when he was like in the trials, and her father is her adopted father, who is a vampire king, and so he's been training her whole life, and she is with all these vampires and then has to team up with this other vampire, and he's got wings, and it is a romance, very slow burn, so good. Definitely a huge cliffhanger at the end, which killed me. I cannot wait for book 2. But this one, if you love the ACOTAR series, if you love fantasy romance, you have to pick this up. Then, no surprise, is King of the Court by R.S. Gray. These couple were on my top reads of the year, and I read them in December, which was the last month, and so this one is a very angsty romance, and it has a time jump in it, and it's kind of forbidden because the heroine works at a diner, and she also works as a cleaner. She has multiple jobs to make money for, I believe it was her grandmother who is sick, so all of her money is going towards her, but she is super smart and was part of this like program at a university, but had to throw it all away or put it on pause in order to take care of her grandmother. The hero is a star basketball player to the point where he is on the Olympic team, and they are in her town for the Olympic training camp that they're going to, and he meets her, wants her, and she's very resistant and hesitant, but then ends up breaking down because of certain situations she's put in, and it's so good. But then they're like, we have a deadline on our relationship because you're leaving and I have to stay here, and then we time jump a little bit for them then they're reunited, and it is so good. The angst in that time jump absolutely killed me. I loved it so much, and I'm obsessed. So this is an Aris Gray I loved. You have to check it out. Another sports romance is Mile High by Liz Tomford. This one is a hockey romance, and it is with our heroine who is a flight attendant for the hockey team's like chartered plane, and it is with Xander's, and the minute he meets her, he is so obnoxious, wanting her attention, and she is someone who is like, I don't want your attention, and I don't want to play your games, and that makes him want her even more. So it is definitely the hero pursuing the heroine. Such good banter, and the heroine also is plus size, and she has a lot of stuff she's dealing with her ex, and I love this. I loved all the side characters. I love the hero's friends. I love the heroine's friend and her brother, and I'm so excited for book 2. This one had just such a good dynamic between the characters. We also have some dogs and a shelter that the heroine works for, and they have to be willing to risk it all for each other too, because it is a forbidden romance. The staff is not allowed to have any relationships with the players, and there's lots of traveling, forced proximity. This had so many tropes I loved. I was obsessed, and I cannot wait to read book 2. Then we have The Frat Boy by Nikki Sloan. This one is so good. My favorite in the series. The hero and heroine hate each other. They're both in Greek life, and their fraternity and sorority have to go head-to-head in this like competition, and the heroine loses because she thinks someone cheated, and they really needed the money, surprises money, and so they start like this epic mud fight, I think, and end up being suspended from their Greek life and nowhere to live. So the heroine ends up answering an ad for adult film where lodgings provided, so they get to live where these films are made. Little does she know that the other person hired is the hero that she hates from the fraternity from that competition, and so neither one of them wants to back down. It is like perfect hate to love. They cannot stand each other, but they cannot stand each other to the point where they're not willing to back down and quit because of the other person, so they both are like, fine, we'll do some scenes together, and they have explosive chemistry, and it is so good. It is phenomenal. The spice in here, amazing, and I loved how they started to fall for each other, and they were like looking forward to scenes with each other even though they were claiming they hated each other. It's so good. I gave this 5 stars. I still think about it. Absolutely my favorite in the series. Then I read An Optimist Guide to Heartbreak by Jennifer Hartman. This one is very emotional, even though it is a lot less emotional and dark than her other books. So this one, our heroine and hero were best friends growing up with the hero's little sister, and they were like on the cusp of something more when something tragic happened to his sister. We don't know what it is, but something happened and she's no longer around. Now the heroine is back in town, and she actually buys the house the hero used to live in and wants to track him down to just see him, make amends, and ends up working in his auto shop. He owns like a car garage and needs a secretary, and she wants to apply for it, like a front desk worker, and he first says no when he sees her. He is like the definition of grump. This is a grump sunshine romance, and it was so emotional and so good. They push each other away, but the heroine is just so kind. It was just so good. And this is a duet, so it does end on a cliffhanger. I didn't love the second part of the duet, so I did not give that one 5 stars, but it did wrap up their story well. I wanted a little bit more with what happened with the sister. Like, I was expecting more of what she writes in her other books, and that's not what we got here, so I was a little let down with that, but overall, it's such a good Grump Sunshine. Very damaged hero. So good. Then I have Little Eyes by Helena Hunting. I have not stopped talking about this book. This one is, again, where they knew each other in the past, and the heroine was almost kidnapped, and like she actually was like kidnapped but found pretty quickly, but has severe PTSD and anxiety because of it, and the hero has that as well because of that experience and just wants to protect her, but the parents think that they cannot like cope on their own, so they separate them, and then something happens between them when they're teenagers, and the heroine is horrified by what happens, and her heart's broken, and now they're in college, and she hates him. She detests him for what he did to her, and he is very stoic and grumpy around her, but very possessive, and he's like, no one can touch you, and he ends up having to move into her house where she lives with her brother, and he's a hockey player. The brother's a hockey player too, I believe. One of their cousins or something, there's like a ton of them that live together. One of the cousins, I think, is a figure skater though, and I'm excited for his book, but they have forced proximity, and then he needs to grovel for what he did, and I loved it. It turned very spicy for the second half, which I was not expecting. So good. Like, I love it when they have such a deep connection from childhood that carries on into adulthood, and they cannot stay away from each other. So this one I loved, and I'm very excited to pick up book 2. Then I have Whispers of You by Cowles. This one is her newest release, which is also a second chance romance. I love second chance romances. They were together in high school, and the hero was someone who was very selfless and always putting others first, and so he's always late to everything, and he was late to dinner in high school, and she was attacked by boys that were attacking their town, and so they shot her, and and she recovered, but it traumatized the hero so much that he left and never came back. And now we're 10 years later, around I think 10 years later, his dad has had a heart attack, so he's come back to take care of his family and make amends with the town, including his friends and our heroine. And our heroine does not want to forgive him. She doesn't want to be around him, but they end up spending more time together and slowly falling back in love. And then there's suspense because people are being picked off who were harmed in the previous shooting, which is such a fun premise. I really love this. The suspense also was what I really loved about this one. I love a good romantic suspense, especially when it has more suspense, and this one definitely had more suspense than what her previous ones did, and it was a great setup for a series because the hero's family is going to get the rest of the books, and I loved seeing them. I loved their dynamic. I loved them letting him in again and trusting him, and the romance, of course, with the second chance, her learning to trust him again was so good. Highly recommend checking this one out as well. Another historical is Reckless by Amanda Quick. This one was really fun because the heroine is a rare book collector and she needs help getting this book, and the hero ends up helping her, and the hero also collects books and he's trying to find this one book that he has been missing because his father, I believe, or he had to sell it off because of they needed funds because they didn't have any, and it's their romance, and they have a lot of shenanigans, which are so fun, and dangerous situations they're put into, but I had so much fun reading this book. This plot was so much fun and had a lot of fun things that were happening with the heroine. It was something that definitely kept you entertained, very dramatic, and I cannot wait to read more from Amanda Quick because I've loved 2 of her books so far, and I have a lot more of her backlist to explore. Then I have Dotted Lines by Devney Perry. This is the last book in her Runaway series, and this one's also a second chance and has a time jump with the characters, so we get a lot of when they met. This series surrounds these kids who grew up in a junkyard together. They all ran away from home, grew up in the junkyard, and then left when they turned 18, and the heroine was one of the youngest with her twin, and the hero stuck around until they turned 18 to leave, and the week leading up to when they left, the hero and heroine finally got together, and then though they knew they needed to go their separate ways for the paths that they were on. So heroine left and the hero went his direction, and now they are back where the heroine is taking the Cadillac that the hero lived in back to him because the heroine from book 1 had it restored and all of them have been driving it across the country. So she's bringing it to him and they meet again, and this one was so good. They are both like, you've always been it to me, but there are some circumstances that are stopping them from getting back together. They reminisce together, and I think it was just the best conclusion for the series. I definitely recommend reading it in order to get the most out of this book, but I really enjoyed seeing them together falling in love in the beginning for the first 30-40%, and then that time jump to when they reconnect. So I love that balance of the past and the present, and it was just so good. But remember, please read the series in order. Then I have Final Offer by Lauren Asher. I did a reading vlog for this book and I was obsessed. The hero in this one is definitely a damaged hero. He has substance abuse issues, which he's currently dealing with. It's a second chance romance again. Do we see a pattern here? So many of these are second chance. Our hero is one of the Dreamland billionaires where the grandfather in his will, in order to get shares for Dreamland, which is like Disney, they need to follow these stipulations. So he has to go back to this house that they spend every summer at, and the heroine is living there and she is someone that he hurt in the past. So they're reconnecting and he has to grovel a lot and deal with his substance abuse issues, and it was so good. Cal is such a fun hero and I just love his personality and how much he was obsessed with the heroine, and I could not stop reading this. It was a little long, but I just loved it. My favorite in the series, definitely. Then I have Bittersweet Memories by Katarina Mora. This one is an amnesia romance, second chance. So the hero and heroine fell in love when they were younger, and the heroine was from a really wealthy family. The hero was living in a shelter and she was volunteering at the shelter. They met, started falling for each other, but she was still a little too young, so nothing happened, and then something happens to her father and now she is living in the shelter as well. That's when they fall in love, but she gets amnesia. Now fast forward a few years and she is dating someone else, and the hero has literally created this multi-million-dollar security company to find her. And he finds her dating someone else. The angst in here, she is dating someone else, but he is like, you've always been mine, I'm gonna have you. And he is this successful millionaire who can do anything he wants, and it was so good. I loved this so much. I really loved the first half where we explored them falling for each other, and then the second half where he's trying to find her again and they're reconnecting. So good. I love Katarina Mora, and this is probably my favorite by her so far. Then we have Powerless by Elsie Silver, which is a friends to lovers romance. The hero is a hockey player. The heroine and him have been friends because they grew up on the ranch that he was raised on. Something happened in the past and his parents aren't that great, so he moved in with the Eatons on their ranch, and she is their cousin, so she spent summers there. Has always been in love with him, but he has not been into her, and we figure out why. And now she is gonna get married, and he rescues her on her wedding day, and they run away together, and they do a lot of road trips together, and it's just them healing and talking through things with each other and falling in love. And it was just the sweetest. I love Jasper so much. He's very silent and brooding and stoic, but he falls so hard for her, and I loved it. I love them so much. Then I have Sinner and Saint by Sierra Simone. I'll just put these two together. So they are taboo romances. One is about a nun, one is about a monk, and they're all about the Bell brothers, and they are so good. I highly, highly recommend doing the audiobooks. I did audio for both of them and think that was just a whole other experience in itself. And Sinner is best friend's little sister romance, and she is training to be a nun and wanting to live that life, but wanting to explore everything about life before she takes her vow of celibacy, and that was this one. And then Saint is a second chance MM romance, and oh my goodness, it was so good. I love the emotions in these books. They're very, very heavy, but they're both so good. Sierra Simone's such a beautiful writer, and I could not recommend these books enough. And the last one, talk about angst, is The Choice by Ashley Jade. This one is a duet, but it's really like a prequel to what their actual story is going to be. We saw these characters in The Words, where it is Josh and Memphis, who are basically brothers. They're foster brothers. They grew up together. They're both very damaged from very abusive households, and now they are placed in a new house next door to Skylar, and we know Skylar was engaged to Josh in The Words, but she's obviously in love with Memphis, and so Josh pretty much like meets her first. Josh and her have very similar trauma that they bond over together, and so they're in love, but Josh is a horrible, horrible human being. So horrible to her. He is very, very damaged though, which like you get, but that does not excuse his horrible actions. And so she slowly is falling for Memphis, and Memphis has been in love with her since he met her for years. It's so hard for him to see her with Josh, but he can't do anything because Josh is his brother and he'd never betray him. And so it is their very, very messy romance before we get their actual love story in book 2. So there's a huge cliffhanger in here, but it was so good. I was obsessed. Definitely my favorite from February. And those are all my 5-star reads for the winter season. Let me know if you've read any of these and what your favorite books are for the last 3 months. I would love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Bye.